With this fly, the Bonne Bouche, and by the way, that doesn't mean what you think it does. It means tasty morsel for the fish. Anyway, I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to do a lot of tenting. For instance, I wanted the tail veiling to tent over the tail. I wanted the peacock quill to tent over the golden pheasant tippet and the underwing. I wanted the teal to tent over that. I divided the wing up into two sections, one consisting of Amherst pheasant tail, golden pheasant tail, and Bustard. And I wanted that section of the wing to tent over the underwing. Then over that, another wing, the remainder of the wing, made up of yellow and claret turkey strips. Over that, the mallard roof, and finally over that, the golden pheasant crest topping. In addition, I wanted to have the fly to have a low wing as opposed to my typically big wing. I managed to get to the end, but it was no stroll in the park. I'm not happy with all aspects of the fly, but I thought I'd show it to you anyway. It was a great exercise. I've already completed the underbody and tag on this. It's a little bit trivial. Refer to my video on the Dusty Miller if you want to see how it's done. I always take a measurement of the hook gap to get an idea of the length that I want the tail to be when it's tied in. I want the tail, when tied in, to be 1.5 times the hook gap when measured from the tie-in point to the tip. In this case, the gap was 16 millimeters, so the tail measured diagonally from tie-in point to tip will be 24 millimeters. But give yourself another millimeter or two, because some of the root of the tail will get pulled underneath the thread wraps. Don't overdo this. You want just a little bit of the root underneath the thread wraps. I wound up mounting a second tail with less curvature to promote a lower wing. Right here, I'm selecting the tail veiling slips, and I'm using Kenya crested guinea here. And I chose that because, number one, I like the way it looks, but number two, the fibers tend to stay together a little better. Here I'm mounting it. I like to straddle the hook a little bit and then pull it all up when I'm done. And this wing is actually going to straddle the tail a little bit. You can mount this more vertically, not straddling on the inner part of the tail. Couple different ways of doing it. Bind down the butts. You see me flattening the thread here, spinning the bobbin counterclockwise, or as if I'm unscrewing a light bulb. You really don't need to go through these machinations with the thread. This has got a seal body. If it had a floss body, then it would be more important. I'm just in the habit of flattening the thread all the time where the body's concerned. And it takes longer, and it's needless on this fly, certainly. Here I'm using some 721C wax, which is Marvin Nolte's wax formula. I made this wax myself. And now I'm making some dubbing out of some scarlet yarn. This is William Bailey's Berlin wool from from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And Bill does a lot of wonderful dyeing using the old methods. And whenever I call him on the phone, he's always out harvesting black oak bark or something to make one of his dyes. He's pretty amazing, and I love his products. But you can use any sort of red wool that suits your fancy. Merino wool works beautifully for this as well. The reason you make a dubbing rather than just taking a strand and winding it on there is it's much more robust, and that's how it was done. When any wool bodies, wool tags, whatever, were made of dubbed wool, typically. This is the shape I personally like, but it can be more oval than this, certainly. Whatever suits your eye. This is Uni French Twist silver. If you don't have this or anything exotic like this, you can just use oval silver tinsel. And I've prepped this flat gold tinsel by cutting the end at an angle just to cut down bulk underneath the hook. Tie them both in. And make sure you get enough wraps to really hold this stuff, and then just cut the butts. I'll speed up some of the thread wrapping and spinning. I'm flattening and wrapping and flattening, and old habits die hard. On this fly, this is almost pointless, but it makes me happy. In preparation for the seal dubbing, I'll put a lot of this wax on. It just helps it adhere a little bit. This is not sticky wax. This wax has a lot of rosin in it, and what it does is it just creates more friction. That's the point of it. But it does help with the seal. Now, there are a couple ways you can handle the seal. You can do a dubbing loop. Ron Alcott did. Paul Little does on some of his flies. But most of the Europeans just twist the dubbing on, and they swear that's how it was done. So that's how I do it. And you just use a lot of force when you're twisting this seal on the thread. Just use all your strength. And try not to use a lot of dubbing in the beginning or a lot of seal. You want to dub it as finely as you can dub seal. And then as you go, add more and more seal. Right now, right at this point, I'm at about the 2/5 point of the shank. We're going to tie in the hackle, Claret hackle for the palmered hackle on this thing. I didn't spend a lot of time measuring this. I kind of have an idea from previous flies where it should be. You want to tie it in so that it will follow the second, starting at the second turn of tinsel, it will follow behind that. And it will follow directly behind the tinsel. I've switched to black thread here. And the reason I've done that is everything from here on is the materials are dark. And if you leave it white, sometimes the white can show through the seal after you've wrapped the body. And rather than risk that, I'll just darken it up with some black thread. Again, I'm twisting this on. I won't show the whole process here. But I'm twisting on more and more dubbing as I go. I like, as I wind, I use my left hand, Renee Harrop style, to tighten up the seal. So you don't get the big loops in it that you'll get if you don't do this. I'm going to wrap the flat tinsel. Whenever you're wrapping tinsel over a rough body, you have to use a lot of force, a lot of tension. Otherwise, it will tend to move around. So I'm pulling with all my might. You can see how the hook's bending here. I like to tie off on the side, and I always do one trapping motion, and then I'll cut it, and then bind down the flat part on the side with a few more wraps. Now here it's important to get this twist just right exactly behind the flat tinsel, which is why you see me spending a lot of time getting this started. And again, I am really pulling on this tinsel, and I'm kind of starting it on the tinsel and sliding it off the back as I wrap. That way it's right tight against there. Against it. Again, tie off on the side. What that does is if by tying off on the side, it keeps the bulk on top down, which makes it easier to mount underwings and wings without having things kick up. In my case, I always like a low wing, not necessarily in height, but I like a parallel wing, parallel to the shank. Let me put it that way. I don't. This is just personal taste on my part. I don't like a wing that's kicked way up on an angle. So in order to achieve that, I've got to keep the top of the hook fairly well free of lumps and anything that'll kick the wing up. Even then, I still have issues just from the taper of the body, but every little bit helps. Now this, as you can see, I'm folding the hackle as I wrap, and I'm wrapping the stem right behind the twist, as close as I can get it. Now you don't want to use too much force pulling on this. You want to use some, but not too much, because if this snaps, you're going to be redoing the entire body, which is no fun when that happens, and it happens. The twister or oval tinsel is there specifically to protect the stem from the teeth of the salmon. That's its reason for being. The farther down you get, the more difficult it is to get these fibers to fold. I'm using pretty much all of this hackle because I had quite a space to fill with it. I left a little too much room up front on this fly. Tying the stem along the bottom, binding it down along the bottom of the shank. I've done my best to pull the hackle down, and now I've got a Velcro brush here, and I'm trying to brush out the seal and brush the hackle down on the sides at the same time. Kind of a two birds with one stone idea. Sweeping the hackle back, also getting the seal out of there. And what I try to achieve on all my flies is, ideally, I'd like to have the hackle as well as the seal taper from back to front, from shortest to longest. And I've pretty much achieved that here. Right now, any tough fibers here, ones that just won't pull down, won't stay down, I'm getting rid of them. I'm plucking them out. Next, I'm going to mount the golden pheasant tippet underwing. And I've done a lot of prep work on these stems to get this thing to sit. I've flattened and twisted the near stem, twisted it clockwise. The far stem, the same thing, only counterclockwise, so that the top edges will meet when mounted. So this is the golden pheasant tippet, and I want this, see how that's popped up a little bit. I want it to be pretty low on the shank. I mean, ideally, I'd love to have it touching the seal the whole way. So I backed off a turn there, trying to crimp it down a little bit. That doesn't work typically, and it didn't work there. And it's low enough, but since I'm going to tent over it, I need to get rid of a lot of the fibers on top. So once I get it situated where I want it, I'm going to pull fibers off the top, and I'll show you how to do that here. I could have done this ahead of time, but I really like to do it after the fact. Then again, it's kind of nervous time doing this. Divide it as far back as you like with scissors, and then just pull a little bit off at a time. Don't try to pull it all off at once. You can wreck the whole stem doing that. Just do it in 2 or 3 stages. Over this, I'm going to tent left and right peacock quill slips. The left slip forming the near underwing, near part of the underwing. This underwing is golden pheasant tippet, peacock quill, and teal. There are a lot of different ways to handle this underwing. This is the way I decided to do it because I wanted to do a bunch of tenting on this fly. Creep up on it with your left hand. Make sure everything's where you want it. Tie it in. Always double check it from the top. Don't go too far forward with your thread wraps on this. Just 2 or 3 wraps to hold it well, and then you'll take them back to the peacock underwing. Now we'll get ready to put the teal on. These are 2 strips of teal, a left that forms the near underwing and a right that forms the far. And we're going to tent over everything with these. In this case, I've made the teal just a little bit shorter than the peacock wing for no great reason, honestly. Just to differentiate it a bit. Once again, not a lot of wraps forward. We don't want this teal to pop up. It'll tend to pop up anyway over time. In retrospect, it might have been a good idea for me to cut the butts off of this underwing before proceeding with the overwing. And that's because I had a lot of problems with these slips popping up as I added more stages as the fly went on. And that's because the butts extend out towards the front of the fly. So as you put more things out towards the eye, it will cause a teeter-totter effect and cause these things to pop up. Live and learn. Do as I say, not as I do. You need to have as much foresight as possible with these flies. You should always be thinking 2 stages ahead at least. And that comes with experience. Now we're going to get ready to marry the first half of our main wing, the lower part of the main wing. And I've decided here on about 5 strands of Amherst Pheasant. Love Amherst Pheasant. It doesn't marry particularly well, so I'm going to marry it to Bustard, which will marry to your tying table. And that should help me out. And I've cut 3 or 4 strands of Bustard, but I'm only going to use one of them. I'll strip off everything else. You'll see what I do with the next set in a minute. I've got 3 strands of Bustard there, which is what I wanted. It's hard for me to tell 3 from 4 these days. My eyes not being what they once were. But I got it right this time. The first go round with the marrying it came up a bit short, so I did it again. Now I'm stripping off the next 2, and I'm gonna put them on the section after this next section. The next section is 4 or 5 strands of golden pheasant tail. And again, this doesn't marry very well. That's why I've got the Bustard in there to help me out with some of the splitting. I still got some splitting when all was said and done. But if you try to marry Amherst Pheasant to golden pheasant directly, you'll get a lot of splitting. The Bustard helps. And because I knew this was going to be an underwing, I made it kind of big, maybe a little too big when all was said and done. It's kind of a waste of Amherst Pheasant after this. But I do another section of Amherst here, and then a little bit more Bustard on top of that. I made the Bustard go 1, 2, 3 as I was going up, 3 strands on the top. This could have been a nice wing all by itself, as you'll see. But, like I said, I wanted to do some tenning, and this was all for fun, all experimental. And a lot of old flies, I see a lot of, in the old books, I see a lot of layering going on, or what appears to be layering. I don't know. But that's what I was kind of going for here, a layered look. And there's my final section of Bustard, 3 strands. I'm holding it up there to get an idea about how it's going to work with the tail. And I may or may not remarry some things. I'm going to try to hump this wing quite a bit. So that's why I had it humped there. And now here I've married a corresponding right wing for the far wing, and now I'm going to mount both. And again, I get it situated and sort of creep up with my left hand, which is the hand I'll hold the slips with. The pressure here in the left hand is towards the top of the wing. If you don't do that, as you pull the thread loop closed, it can take the top of the wing forward. It'll get caught up in the top and yank it forward. So keep your pressure high with the left hand. By the way, I notice I'm maintaining the pinch in my left hand with the thumb and index finger. For years, I did that with the thumb and middle finger, and that's because things weren't going well at the time with the thumb and the index finger, and I switched to the middle finger, and it was like magic. So if things aren't going well, try another finger. You never know. And now, unbeknownst to myself, I'm doing it. I'm back to doing it with thumb and index. Apparently, I can do it either way at this point. I don't even think about it. Here, I'm humping the wing again while it's on the fly, pinching with my right hand and pulling back on the fibers and down with my left. And now these are married strips of dyed white turkey, dyed yellow and claret. 2 strands each, lefts forming the near part of the upper wing. And again, I'm tenting these over, and this is my second go round with this particular pair. The first one, the far wing got pulled down, which can happen. So I just redid it. And I think I can make that work. There it is after some cleaning up. And this is a folded slip that I'm using for the Mallard roof. And I'm trying to mount this, and I want it, as I tug on the thread, I'm trying to get it to pull down the upper part of the wing, and it just won't do it. See, I'm tapping on it, trying to get it to go down, but it's caught up. No matter what I do, I can't get it to straddle properly. So what I tried next is I pulled it back off, flattened it out, spent some time remarrying it, and then I held it flat against the near side and then just bent it around and then put a thread wrap or 2 on it. And the result was this. So this is the same mallard strip, just done a slightly different way. So rather than beating a dead horse, always try something else. Be as inventive as you can. This is a prepared guinea hackle that I'm going to use for the throat. This is the true DFO method that I'm using here, and you can adjust the length of the hackle with the stem. To be honest, this hackle I get a little long. It's unfortunate, and hindsight's 20/20, but I didn't catch it at the time, and I would have liked this throat to have been shorter. Get everything adjusted and pulled forward. Once again, no more than about 3 or 4 wraps here, each direction. Guinea has a propensity to stick together, so it takes a lot of brushing out and so forth. These are the sides. Once again, lefts mirroring, making up the near wing, and it's teal married to red, scarlet dyed turkey in this case. These are rights. These are from the right side of the feather. Made up these slips. And by the way, This is not actually teal. It's pintail. Pintail is a bit longer, and if you want longer sides, you can use pintail. Now, some teal will get this long as well, but this is what I had, and pintail and teal are almost interchangeable in my mind. I can barely tell them apart. Teal tends to be a little more striking. This is a macaw feather, and I'm going to cut a single strand off the left side of this feather, and that will form my near horn. And this gave me a lot of, mounting these correctly gave me a lot of problems over the years, and it's ridiculously easy to do if you know how to do it. You want to see mostly yellow with a strip of blue on top. You see how that is? That's how you want to orient this to mount it. And then it will work every time, and things will curve properly, and it will be beautiful. The far one is done the same way. You see yellow on the bottom with blue on top, but you use a right strand for the far one. So it follows the same principles as our wings and underwings and everything else. Lefts form the near side and rights form the far. Horns can be readily adjusted after the fact, and they can be difficult to get perfectly aligned and adjusted. And you just need to work with them, pull them to length, etc. I have the best luck mounting them high on the towards the head, high up, almost as high as I can get them. And you'll find things get in the way, and things, the angle won't be quite right, and you just have to keep working with it until everything's the right length. As you can see, my wing got knocked down. That will happen. It's a good idea to, and unfortunately, I have never been successful at this, but you want to touch the fly as little as possible. The fly itself, the fly that is the stages you've already completed, as little as possible. And it's not easy to do. I tend to be a bit ham-handed. Right here, I'm tying in some red thread because this has got a red wool, dubbed wool head. And as you can see, I've trimmed all the butts off of everything. And I spent a lot of time doing that. That's one thing you want to be very careful with. Waxing the thread just to help the wool adhere a little bit. Tearing the wool dubbing with my fingertips. Get it to where there are no pieces in it, so it's just fluff. It'll take a while. I like doing it this way as opposed to the coffee grinder method, for instance. This just works better for me. This thread's been waxed. Dub as finely as you can reasonably dub with the wool you're dealing with. Once you get a piece on, just wrap it up to the wing. I'm adding a little more dubbing here. Do your best not to get into the wing itself. The topping in particular, you can if you take just one too many turns, you can crush the topping down. I noticed that the wool had worked its way down almost to the gut eye, and I want some of the black on the bottom showing. So I took it back, and I'm trying again. Right there is the one too many turns I was talking about. And just do a whip finish right up just in front of the topping. Hold the thread under tension. Cut off with a single blade of your scissors. We'll have a look at the fly. There it is, the Bonne Bouche. Have fun with this one.